Hello, folks. Today we have a very, very special guest. He is an occultist, a spiritual teacher, an author that I have great respect for, Mr. Updike. Folks, if you have questions during our live stream, or if you have opinions that you would like to share, please be very, let's say, open. Do not be shy. We will. We are spontaneous about the discussion, so we will address maybe left-hand path topics, magic topics. Basically, this is like a dialogue that we would have had anyway, even maybe without the live. So this is very valuable because it's very spontaneous and it flows naturally. Anyway, so I first learned about you from YouTube. I have watched a few videos of yours about magic, and I have observed that you have a very, very mature vision about how things work in magic. You are a practical magician. It can be felt very by anyone who practices magic. People who practice magic for real recognize themselves between themselves very easy. Anyway, so would you identify yourself, let's say, like a left-hand practitioner, or what is your vision about your practice? Let's say, what can you tell us about your, let's say, daily practice, or what would be your main spiritual path? Because some teachers, for example, like to tell people. I do this myself. Sometimes I encounter a group that is initiated into tantric magic, and because I have the background experience of many years about it, I speak in their language. But my main path is with the runes right now. So I'm curious to ask you, what would you name to be as your path, let's say?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's one actually that I was asked yesterday, as I did a live broadcast yesterday, actually talking about how people can deal with isolation, because I think in these times that's an important thing. By the way, I just wanted to say too, thank you very much for having me on. But you know, a lot of people in answering your question really want to identify themselves, and I have a problem with that. I didn't early on in my practice. I used to say, you know, I am this and I am that. But there's something that you know, somebody I respect said, who is a person who is a mystic in Eastern India, and he was right on this. He said, whatever you identify yourself with, you will never go any further than that. Not because you can't, you've chosen. And I thought, you know, when you're dealing with something that comes from the infinite, do we really want to limit ourselves?
Very good, very good.
You know, I used to call myself left-hand path. But then I discovered something that was very important, and I had fallen into the trap that I've called dualism. And by that, I'm not talking about polarity. Polarity is natural. There's a positive and a negative pole. If you take a look at a battery, it has a positive and a negative pole. And if there's more positive or more negative on either pole, the battery's dead. Then you have to recharge it again, if it's a rechargeable one, or get a new one. And magic is the same way. Life is the same way. Existence is the same way. The Northern tradition, the path of the runes, is, of course, the core of my practice. And a lot of people, because I talk about many other different things, have said, you know, oh, did you leave the runes? No, no. Multiple avenues have always been a part of my practice. Because so much is missing from the lore, a person needs to be able to fill in the blanks. And if that's missing from the Northern lore, well, you got to look at other things and then find out what is consistent between them all. And, you know, and so in doing that, I realized, okay, polarity is great, because we understand that there is a thesis and an antithesis. I'm saying that funny because my tongue is dry. But you have the two opposing polarities, but they're both true at the same time. And together, when they unite, and what they call the reconciliation, it creates the cycles.
Yeah.
And these were all very important things. If you look at the Vanir gods and goddesses, they were the gods and goddesses of the cycles. And they were powerful. Look in the lore where it talks about the first war that ever happened, where Othin cast his spear and the Aesir attacked, and they fought with the Van, or the Vanir gods and goddesses, and the Van took the field. They almost lost. Because, you see, the gods and goddesses created the worlds of Yggdrasil. And according to the wording of that, all the 9 worlds were sacred enclosures. Well, what's an enclosure? It's a limit. If you put a fence around a bunch of cows, you've created an enclosure. It's a limit. And that's because without that limit, what is infinite could never be expressed in any way. Okay. That would be a discussion for a totally different time. But when you're looking at that, you find 2 things that never stop for anyone: the perception of time and change. Things always evolve. Things always mutate. That is the way of the cycles. And when you understand that, you realize that in that limit, there is still access to the infinite, as long as you don't try to take that limit and impose it on the infinite. Because the moment you do that, you will destroy yourself, spirit, mind, and body. Because not that the infinite has anything against you, it just cannot be limited. It's not possible. All right. That's like you holding an atomic bomb between your hands and saying, I'm going to hold back the blast. No, you're not. Although you'll be the first to die.
Although as a small footnote, let's say, to what you said, about the atomic bomb holding between the hands, we do have in Ramayana and Mahabharata initiates who wielded powerful magical weapons. Yeah. So more or likely, your joke, if we look at the Ramayana and Mahabharata, your joke is not so far off from reality,
It's funny. But at the same time, people get caught up in the limitation, and they start to identify with that as being absolute truth, when it's not. Only the infinite is truth with a capital T. The rest is relative truth, how we communicate with the environment that we have in our perception. And when we understand that, we don't get caught up in a lot of bullshit. All right. Dualism looks at things as being in absolute terms. All right. It takes all the things of so-called light, all the things of so-called darkness, and saying that's all that there is, and it's at war with its opposite. And it looks like that from the perspective of us here, because we are in limitation. We even have a body of limitation. All right. We're born, we live, and we die. The body is not immortal. People can have long, I've heard stories of people that have had extremely long lives. Practicing magic, hundreds of years, actually. But that doesn't mean that they will not eventually die.
Maybe by their own will.
Death is a choice, but you know what? It's also a gift, because who would want to be stuck in this body for all eternity? When you realize that we are all part of the infinite, and there is nothing that is not you. I like the way one magician put it.
Yeah, this is your vision is very sounds much more like the Advaita a bit, like the Advaita Vedanta vision a bit.
It's kind of, my friend D.H. Thorne put it this way. when the time comes that you physically die, then and this is of course inaccurate, because of course anything we say about the infinite is inaccurate, but this is kind of like a way that we can relate to it, however we can. The infinite is everything. Who am I going to be next? That was fun. I think I'm going to be so and so. And you know what? We all are experiencing things from a perspective of consciousness. And even when it comes to the ancestors, a person's got to realize when you die and pass across the veil to the world of the dead, you're still in the world of limitation. You haven't passed into the infinite.
That's for sure. Yeah.
You're still there. Uncle John, who died 5 years ago, didn't become all-knowing just because he died. All right. There are things that go on in the evolutionary process where a person must allow themselves to understand who they really are. And I believe, rather than at that pinnacle moment deciding to obliterate themselves, like many people in some mystical practices believe, to decide to reflect it instead. Because in the infinite, there is no limitation. So everyone could reflect the entire universe, and there would still be infinite space. This is what immortality really means, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And, and there's some people that, they want to obliterate. Go for it if that's what you want. But I think that that's not the impulse that created all of this. And so a lot of people said, oh, you're left-hand path because you don't believe in the union of all things in that respect. No, I'm not. I'm kind of in that position where I look at dualism and I say that's actually what enslaves people, to keep repeating things over and over and over and over again without learning anything. Polarity, on the other hand, understands that there is a time and a place for dark magic. There is a time and a place for light magic. And when you understand that light means wisdom, not God, it means wisdom. And darkness means that which we do not know. And there is more power than you can imagine in I do not know than there is in, oh, it's got to be this. Because every definition is a limitation, whereas you're open to any possibility when you realize we don't know anything. And there's no place for us to feel like we're better than everybody else, because even if we did know more mental knowledge than anybody on the planet, we still don't know anything. It's just, and so I consider myself just an occultist or a magician. I don't give myself the label left-hand path, right-hand path, whatever. I'm just a magician because in my view, there is only power and what you decide to do with it. And what wisdom you're able to gain from it. And when you look at Othin, he was the same way. He was a great god. He was the All-Father. He was also Bolger.
Yeah. Yes.
And the god of death. People didn't even write his name very often on the stones because they didn't want to invoke the god of death.
Okay.
They called upon him if they were at war. They wanted victory. He was Victory Father, Lord of the Host.
Sometimes he behaved like Loki.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes he was worse than Loki.
Yeah, sometimes he was worse than Loki for sure. He tells us a lot.
I believe that Loki actually was a shadow side of Othin. Now, I could be wrong, but when you take a look at it, Othin was the son of a Jotun. All right, he was the grandson of Ymir. So was Loki. But what Loki did was be the opposer to order, because he was very much into chaotic things. And a lot of times he ended up going along with Thor to fix the problems that he himself caused.
It's a symbolic story there. It's a symbolic story there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I have, for example, yes, Loki as a fire god,
Mm-hmm.
starting things and fixing things. It's a big mystery there, as Loki as the fire god, and we don't know how much of Loki ended up with us from the lore because of the Christian transformations along the road.
Yeah.
Even from the snakes, the big snakes, Jormungandr or Fafnir or Nidhogg, we don't know exactly if Thor did fought them or it was another agenda behind, because the serpent in Christian times was looked as an evil thing, and the cult of the serpent, the cult of power, exactly like you stated it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the lore was, in my humble opinion, I could be wrong, of course, the lore was certainly corrupted to a certain extent.
I agree. I think it was. And I think it had to be, because if they didn't, their works would have been burned, and they might have been too.
True.
You
True.
know, it was a very different time.
Very different time. We are actually lucky to have what we have, I think.
I think so too. You know, we have access to more information now than we have ever had in the history of humanity, to our knowledge. And how much do we do? Do we just Google pretty cat videos, or do we look at what's available there? And also take it with a grain of salt, because just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Okay. Some people get that idea.
I really want to ask you this. For a certain while, like this is like one of my personal questions to you.
Mm-hmm.
There is knowledge that cannot be imparted in public, and there is knowledge, and I feel it also, I experienced also, there is knowledge that you feel it in your guts and you feel it in your spine, that it's forbidden to go even into a book. What do you think about this?
Yeah, there are things that you can't say. And it's not because it's something that shouldn't be said. It's something that cannot be accurately explained. When you get to a certain point, words fail. And the only thing that you can say is that it must be experienced. And when you hear people talk about, well, it's a mystery, that's what they mean. It's not that they're trying to hide things from you. But if they said it, it wouldn't connect with anything that you experience, because without the practice yourself, you know, it's just not something that you can explain like an English literature course. It's just what it is. And I know one of the things that I do to try to help with that is I have a community that's private, and there's some non-public things that get put out there. And we actually do magic together too. And how do you do that on the internet?
Us too. Lovely, lovely. I know how that feels.
And we don't do it in the sense that, you know, I've been to places where, you know, everybody's texting this and no. We all are in full video, and we are in our own temples, in our own places, and we are doing the ritual together in real time.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And when we do that, I've witnessed people get healed. I've witnessed people get jobs within 24 hours. I've witnessed people moving forward in their lives and in their practice, because time and space doesn't mean anything where it comes to magic. Yeah. But you do need to have the connection there to what you're working with and to the people you're working with. And, you know, I do have a link that I'll share if a person wants to check that out.
Please.
You know, you can certainly do that. I've also written a book, And some of you may have seen this. It's called Transcendent Keys to Power. Now, I'll try to make it so it doesn't visual, but it's a book that I took a long time. I scrapped the manuscript several times and rewrote it, but it deals with principles that you can find in common throughout all magical paths, whether it's shamanism, ceremonial magic, rune magic, voodoo, the magic that they practice in the East, with the tantric systems. It doesn't matter. The methods are very different, but the consciousness that people need to be in order to effectively work magic is not different. And a lot of people are stuck on this idea, especially many folks that I've talked to here in North America that are practicing the Northern tradition, that they have to find out exactly how it was done in the 11th or whatever, and you look at all this type of stuff. You're not going to find that. And even if you found more than what they have currently, it still wouldn't be exactly the same, because there are two things that never stop: the perception of time and change. And if we don't flow with it, we miss the boat. Greenland is a great example of this. There was a Viking settlement in Greenland. I'm sure you've heard of Eric the Red and Leif Erikson. Eric the Red, he was an interesting guy. He got outlawed twice. Got his honor back. He had a bad temper. And, they had this settlement in Greenland. Now, there were indigenous people that also lived in Greenland, and they were thriving. Okay. They were ice fishing. They were doing all kinds of things that would be suitable to the environment that was in. All right. You've seen those kayaks. Well, they had those. Okay. But the Vikings that were there insisted on plying agriculture and fishing out in the sea in their fishing boats, just like they did in Iceland, just like they did in Norway, just like they did in Denmark. And you know what happened? They refused to take on the methods to achieve the same goal, getting food, as the indigenous peoples. And you know what? They died out. And it happened fast.
Good lesson.
And so, change is something that we need to be aware of and not be afraid of, because what difference does it make if you use a method that was used, that you discovered back in the 10th century or 12th century, or if you used a method that was created in the 20th or 21st century, if it gets to the same level of consciousness?
I agree. I totally agree. And for example, sometimes this thought visits me also when I feel that, rune magic was done in a way back then.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to extract knowledge from the past. People have done it. People have risked their lives to do it, or have risked because some knowledge is protected by oaths.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what entity or what guardian protects a certain type of knowledge. Like I had a friend from our guild, or Runic guild, who told me a story, and maybe you know it or not, but this is really relevant. A guy, a mage, a couple of hundreds of years ago, wanted to find out how exactly the Galdra Hall stave was used from the Galdra Brock. How exactly was used? How it exactly was used, and he summoned the creator of the Galdra Hall, and the story goes that he went insane because he was not prepared maybe for that knowledge. On the other hand, I know from first-hand experience that yes, in modern times we can come up maybe with better techniques to work with the runes than our forefathers. This is a possibility. We must not look at our forefathers like they were the ultimate thing. Maybe we are our forefathers and we don't know it.
That is very true. And in fact, I would add to that and say that we are the summation of our ancestors. And, this is powerful because we are not disconnected from where we come from. We aren't. We're unaware of it in many respects. But let's take a look at the way they used to do things, and this could be applicable to any tribe of people that's ever lived. Okay, they discovered things. To them, it was new, and then they would pass that on to the next generation, and they would discover something and add it in, and then they would continue on, and they would talk in the mythological language and in the skaldic prose, because that was a way to traverse the generation gap. And get the seed principles so that it was still there. And when they did this, they had knowledge and gnosis. Now, when we get to the modern day, people that are real sticklers will say, oh, you're using unverified personal gnosis.
Yeah.
You know what? I say there must be a balance between these things.
True.
You know, knowledge is good. Knowledge is fun. You know, it doesn't have to be some dreary experience. It can be fun. You're looking at stuff, you're finding things out, and you make mistakes. But during that process, you also begin to have experiences, and those cannot be discounted either. Some of them are not part of truth, because our egoic mind is quite adept at creating things to try and make us happy.
That's for sure. Yeah.
You know, but there are other things that are actual connection points, and we're doing nothing different by working with that than our ancestors did. Okay, we're just adding our part for the next generation.
Yeah.
And if we stop doing that, we're resisting change. And just like the Vikings, Leif Erikson and Eric the Red and the people they had in Greenland, we will be done, at least in terms of working with what we've come from. And that would be a tragedy, because the runes are an extremely primal and powerful force. They are gateways, portals to the very creative process of Gunungagat. And when you work with them in that way, with respect, you'll find both knowledge and gnosis flow. And then that's applicable to everything else, because you know what? Othin was never satisfied with just one thing. He traveled all the 9 worlds, and I'm sure he traveled outside of the mythological constraints of Yggdrasil.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, because he was always looking for something, because it was exciting for him, and it was part of his evolution, and the other gods and goddesses too, in the way that they proceeded, was an example for us, because they were called our elder kin. And what do we do if you have older brothers and sisters when you're little? Oh, you try to do what they do, because they're all grown up. They're the example to us. And sometimes, and I love this about the stories and the lore, they didn't leave out the unflattering things. Some examples are there for us to know what not to do. And that's good too. Yeah. I see a comment here.
Hi everyone, may I ask what is Daniel's opinion of okay. Well, it's a question. Okay. It's a question not related to the subject, but we are not pinned on a wall with anything. So Daniel, if you want to, you can answer or not this question. Zephalos is a great guy. He is, but I believe he tries to be. He's honest about his question, I think.
No, it's good, because you know that's a question that I've asked myself a lot. Because of course there's somebody that we know personally that's worked in the healthcare profession that may have caught this. Ooh. And is isolating at home, and actually she's taking care of her mother who is dying with cancer. And so to keep her from getting infected, she's been living in her garage. And I know there's a lot of people that are locked down, a lot of people that are concerned. What I believe about this virus is that It's part of the cycles of nature. Regardless of whether there was any human involvement at all, it doesn't matter. It's happened. So now the question is what we do to deal with it and to deal with it effectively.
Yeah,
I think that there are going to be more things arise because there have been things, bacterias and viruses and so forth, that have been frozen in the permafrost for tens of thousands of years and that nobody has immunity to anymore, that will arise as that permafrost melts down. And that's going to end up causing a lot of problems too. But one cannot live in fear of this. Now, those folks that are out there in the world, and this world of limitation, their perception of reality is all they've got. They're going to fight and fight and fight to keep it because they don't want to just cease to be. But the truth of the capital T is that you are part of the source of all things, and death is actually just a transition. It is not an end of anything. And so there's nothing really to be afraid of. The thing is, though, is that we want to be here to do the things that we think are fun, okay? Like learning and expressing ourselves and doing all these things. Just bring it down to the lowest common denominator. So how do we deal with it? Magically, a person needs to center themselves, to practice meditation on a regular basis, because if you're anxious, if you're afraid, you're actually, and they've proven this in the medical field, dropping your immune system down. Okay? If you're angry all the time, it's the same thing. When you're centered, you actually boost your immune system. And then start to consult with the spirits and with the runes. What is the best ward and protection to do for yourself and others that are in your family? And then work that. And realize that if you do end up in this situation where you're stuck, not being able to go out, you also have in that situation an opportunity to practice magic with no distractions. Nothing's going to take you away from it. So go for it. And you know what? You'll be sane. You'll also not be stir crazy. And you will be able to get through it. But where the Mother Earth is concerned, I think that it's part of the cycles of nature, because you know what? We've had plagues happen throughout the history of the human race. And some of them have been really, really, really bad, not just these modern ones here. Look at the Black Death that killed most of Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. But humanity survived. We will survive this.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope that answers your question. That's about all I can say on it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an immunologist. I'm just a magician.
Yeah.
And that's the way I deal with it. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dan, for this answer. My view on it, even if you will find weird my view on the virus, I treat it as an entity, as a manifestation. A manifestation, let's say. It's a manifestation that is allowed to happen, and it has a role to play in our history, for sure. Nothing, I mean, on this global scale, and maybe you will find weird what I'm going to say or not. This is exactly what I think. I'm honest about it. On a global scale like this, events like this are not happening without some influence from the gods, a bit. I feel there is some kind of an influence. I don't know the politics of the gods or the entities behind this crisis right now. There might be a type of reason, but indeed, yeah, with magical practices. Meditation. I have also done a few meditations here on this channel to boost up your immunity system, using the knowledge of the Atharva Veda and of the Vedic chants, treating it like a part of, in a way. Look, a chant in the Atharva Veda states, please, and it states to Takman. Takman is like a name for the virus. Please take your missiles away from our direction. So the Vedic approach to dealing with viruses is negotiating with the virus a bit, negotiating the terms with the virus a bit.
I've heard of this before, and actually I think that that's one of the things that the runes and the spirits would communicate to people, because everything is alive in one way or another. Yeah. Even rocks. All right, everything has a life force to it, otherwise it wouldn't exist. And I've heard of people talking to the air and water element spirits when a tornado has been coming and the tornadoes missed their house. Communication is a good thing. Sometimes that communication fails, though. At that point in time, more aggressive magic is necessary.
I agree.
And when you do that, you got to have the confidence that what you're doing will come to pass. Yeah. And that's, again, where you need to get rid of the fear. Because they're pushing fear in the media everywhere. Be afraid. Well, you know, some people, that's the only way that they'll actually keep themselves out of harm's way. But those of us that are here on this video today, talking and chatting, I'm sure that you're not in that position. So what do? Be proactive. Take control, because you are in control of your life, even if it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So people watching this, if you have further questions and on any topics regarding what was said, or if you feel in your heart that we can answer or Dan can answer some of your questions, please be free to ask your question. Okay, do not be shy. Give it a try.
Absolutely, we're here.
Yeah,
we are too. If you're watching,
not going anywhere right now. Okay.
You know, I just got a background on the back because, of course, I broadcast out of a glorified storage room. It doesn't look like that. I wish I lived in a house that looked like that.
Oh, you look so nice at your place. Yeah. For example, about your book, you made me interested in your book, to be honest. Before the live, we were talking a bit about his book, and in your book there is a life experience of your personal gnosis, correct?
There is. And you know, not in total, but in certain things that I found to be very useful. Just to give an example, you take a look at all of the gods of the north, and then you take a look at the main gods that are there, such as Thor, Othin, Freya, even Loki. And you go back in time, go back. And you find that, you know, there were tribes of people that used to raid Persia on a regular basis that ended up attacking Europe. And I believe that was the context of the mythological war between the Aesir and the Van, and how they grew together and eventually became allies. Okay. But when you take a look at that, the people that formed the Persian religion of Zoroastrianism, they didn't forget their ruthless raids.
Yeah.
And their gods became their demons. Okay.
Devas became demons. That's when I've read Zendavesta, someone told me a couple of years ago, man, you're a big fan of Brahmanism, you're a big fan of Tantric Hinduism, read some Zoroaster, read some Zendavesta, and you will see the truth there about the Hindu religion. And I looked at the Zendavesta and I said, whoa, this have fire sacrifices like the Brahmins. This speak about Soma as the Brahmins, but they name each other in a evil way. Devas became evil and Asuras became the good guys. So the pre-Vedic religion could have been the same pre-Zoroastrian religion, and they surely share a common root for sure. That's what I feel.
Yes, and it's interesting, the symbolism too. Like you take a look at the symbolism of Odin. He's called the Lord of the Hosts. He has the wolves, Greki and Freki. He has the ravens, Hugin and Munin. And then you take a look at one of the chief deities of Ahriman or Angramenu, the god of darkness, Savar, the Lord of Hosts.
Yeah.
Wolves.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You take a look at Andar, the god of storms and thunder.
Andar, Indra, come on.
Yes.
It sounds
And
like,
you know what? If you even move forward to the Quran in Islam, they talk about the evil demons that they have to fight. The evil demons Savar and Andar.
yeah.
The names of the gods of the north permeate. And you know what? I found something very interesting too. And there was an actual hieroglyphic tablet from Egypt, because of course Egypt and Acadia, I believe, were two powerful empires at the time that these tribes were raiding all these different places. And in fact, Acadia and Egypt had a battle that was so horrible that they signed the first peace treaty in the history of the human race that we know of, where they wouldn't attack each other ever again. And there was a treaty made with these tribes that they would never attack Egypt. And you see them swearing by their gods, holding an iron ring. And you know, that is something that even in the North is important, because if you swore an oath on the iron ring, that was the oath that you never broke.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And, you know, you see how this all permeates. And so when I'm looking at these things too, I found, well, I could be wrong on this, but this was the impulse that I had. You take a look at Freya, who was a goddess of passion and war. Okay. And you take a look at the consort of Angramenu, who was Az-Jahi. She was the most dreaded goddess, the darkest goddess in all mythology. And she was a goddess of passion and war. And you wonder, was that a prototype demonized by these people of Freya? I don't know. In working with these spirits, however, I have felt a similarity. And it's very interesting. The aspect of power as well was corrupted in Zoroastrianism, where in the religion it states, Ahura Mazda, the god of light, you are only capable, or not capable, expected to have the good thought, the good word, and the good deed. Whereas if you dealt with Ahriman, you were dealing with the evil thought, the evil word, and the evil deed. However, what they didn't tell you was that the good thought, the good word, and the good deed was only that which agreed with the king and the religion, the priest.
Yeah.
If you had anything else, you were evil. And that was the template of all religions that actually promoted monotheism, including Christianity. If you read the Zendavesta, you will find the blueprint of the Bible.
I totally agree with you on this one. You know? I actually find great similarities between Jehovah and Ahura Mazda. It's like the same prototype of jealous God, rewritten for modern folks back then. And also, Zoroastrianism is everything that it's the opposite of Hinduism, for example, like an antithesis. Hindu burned their dead. Zoroastrians kept their dead on a big field. They did not even bury them. They just let them there to be putrefied. They actually, the Ahura Mazda, where Ahura or Asura, it's somewhere there.
Yes.
Asura, it's somewhere there, basically. And also, they had somas, or they had pujas or havans in Hinduism that they used to attack or cast down asuras, and the asuras in Zoroastrianism had a big number of chants to cast down or kill or cast away or exorcise devas. But when historically speaking or mythologically speaking, the situation went to shit for everyone, and they had to remake the Amrut and the elixir of long life, devas and asuras were forced by circumstances of history to get back together at the great churning of the sea and to remake the elixir of eternity. And there was a moment in time where asuras, according to Hindu mythology, collaborated with devas to make the elixir. And this tells us that this is a cycle. This is a cycle, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact that has to be because the multiverse, universe, world of limitation, as I call it, could not exist without these cycles, because it's like endless folding within the realms of eternity. The only way the infinite could become finite was for it to create something within itself and to fold it through reflection through many different layers, distorting it more and more until we have what we have here. And the friction of the different polarities that are involved with that is actually the fire spirit.
Okay.
And when you realize that, because spirit is what binds everything together, it permeates everything. Then you realize light and darkness are neither something to be afraid of. Darkness is just what you don't know. And are there scary things there? Because, of course, we like definitions. We like to have things that make us feel secure. Of course it can be. It can be very perilous. Absolutely. But try to step out on the street. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You could trip on a rock and fall in front of a bus. You don't know that. Everything is perilous. But when you realize that you are part of the infinite itself, and I don't mean believe it, I mean know it. None of these things hold any fear anymore. And in fact, many times things that are there are afraid of you.
True.
Because sometimes just because a spirit's on a different plane doesn't mean that it's evolved to the point where it knows its own connection either.
Yeah, I totally agree. Some spirits just can communicate with you without them even knowing to do so. They can get drawn to you without their knowledge or even will. And they could also be intelligent.
Yeah.
So some spirits, and you are a spirit worker for so many years, I'm just saying this for the folks here, some spirits are just as much in awe of you as you are of them sometimes.
And some of them, like we were talking about before we went live here, are amused to no end by us, because they look and they do have a knowledge of the infinite to a point, because of course there's a limit to anyone's knowledge of the infinite. It would burst you, even them. But they're amused because they look and they see all of the different strivings that people do, and realizing how ineffective they are, and realizing that these people are part of the infinite. They are gods and goddesses, but they don't know it. And so they look and they have wonderment and curiosity, because they wonder how it is possible that we wouldn't know that. And some of those spirits are the start of them are in the second section of my book, and you won't find those sigils anywhere else. And I'm writing another one that's a supplement to this book that is a full grimoire, dealing with spirits that I discovered that are right on the cusp between the enclosure of Yggdrasil, between the enclosure of the Kabbalah, between the enclosure of the Kripath, between the enclosure of whatever system a person has.
Intermediate spirits.
And these beings, you know, they are there to help, because the time has come. And this is what one of them said to me before I started putting them in this book. The time has come for humanity to reach out to us, and we reach out to them.
Interesting.
And so it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. Now, one of the things I did in this book was interesting. I don't know whether this will show up because I have a green.
I'm curious to see the sigils now, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, here's one sigil.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. And I'll show you another one here. This one. I'm hoping, well, it won't show up because it's green on the background. Okay.
Yeah.
But just imagine that being green, and you can see this.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
I put them in color. Here's one that might show up better. Okay.
Yeah, it's better.
Because what they said to me was they actually interact with the spirits of the elements through spirit. And one of the ways you can contact them, and you can do this with other sigils as well, if you know the attributions of the spirit. And this is where research is important. If you want to know as much about a spirit as you can, even if it's one of the gods of Norse mythology, you want to know as much as you can. What do they relate to most of all? And let's say you're dealing with Loki, and he's very fiery. Well, you don't have a sigil for him, but you could actually scry a sigil for him.
Yeah.
And draw that in red and have a green background on it. Now, what happens with that when you're using color-coded sigils? Those are called flashing colors, and I've done this with all the sigils that I've done. That was
called the Count 2, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yeah. And when you look, let's say, at a fiery sigil with a green background and a red sigil drawn in it, you don't strain, but you just look at it for 5 or 10 minutes. You don't have a black mirror. You don't have smoke and incense. You have a white wall in front of you. After you've looked at it, put it down and look away. And all of a sudden, you see the ghost image of that sigil. Only the background's red and the sigil's in green.
Okay. I will try this out, you know.
When you do that, that's when you call the spirit and you call through the portal.
Say again. So that's
when you see that ghost image, that's when you focus. You're already in that deep state of consciousness, and you contact the spirit through the portal.
Nice.
And that way, you know, it actually takes away everyone's excuses. I don't have a black mirror. I don't have a triangle of art. I don't know how to make one. Well, just have a white wall in front of you. Okay, there you go.
Nice technique, you know. And you speak about these techniques in the book?
Yes, I do.
I will give it a try.
And one of the things I'll do here too, just for like I leave a place for a person to have notes and everything too. I want to apologize that some words, not very many, but there are some that are misspelled. The reason for that is that I did not have an editor, and I did this all myself.
I have the same experience.
And I will correct them at some point in time when I'm able to get on the internet to do it. And I am actually an educated person, but the problem is that when you're looking at a sea of words on an electronic screen, they all begin to look the same after a while.
So let me explain something. In my second book, I will publish my second book this year. It's about runes and some techniques of oddcraft, also known as pranayama, with the runes. They are high advanced alchemy using pranayama, something that, let's say, it can be hurtful for beginners. So it's a book that addresses more people who have worked a lot with pranayama. But I also, in lack of someone to help me with editing, I have done also a lot of, I eaten some letters somewhere or misplaced a dot or stuff like this. But I have someone to help me with this right now. So a person from our study group helps, and we help each other. For
Yes.
example, I help him with something else. He helps me with the editing and stuff like this. But me personally, I don't care as long as the practical magical knowledge is there. I don't care about a dot. I'm honest about it.
I know that some people just, they
Yeah,
look at
yeah, yeah.
me,
But that's
you
their
know.
trial. That's their test, Dan. You know, you're not
Well,
gonna.
one of the things I want to do is just, if it's okay with you, I want to read just a very short selection from the book.
It's not only okay. I'm actually very curious because that technique got me going a bit. Yeah. Fine.
All right, I'm actually going to read part of chapter 1, which is actually something that will help you give an idea of the tone of the book. It's in 2 parts. The first part, and it's a larger part, is how to get yourself prepared, because you are the most important tool in your magical arsenal. It's not how fancy your athame is. It's not how nice your sacred or temple space is. It's you, yourself as a person. That's your connection. That's the tool. So that whether you're in a great place to do magic or if you were naked in a hole in the ground, you would still be able to work. And this is also the way of our ancestors too, because they work spontaneously. All right. Now, the first chapter that I have is called Accepting What Is. All right. And this is something that's ignored by a lot of people that are in orders and so on and so forth, that have their curriculum, do this, do this, do this, and you'll be an effective magician. And I'm sorry, you won't. You do it yourself. Okay. And so it says, the first thing we need to seriously consider is the truth of where one is in the quest for numinous knowledge. We are quite adept at self-deception, even in our day-to-day lives. And this quality is a tremendous hindrance in any magical or occult path, as it prevents us from experiencing real growth. The problem of self-deception is entirely the result of our own original thought process. A great source of the very foundation of self-deception is the influence and programming that has come from indoctrination, which we have all received through the environment we have been born into. This takes on different faces, as all of us as individuals have different challenges, experiences, natural predilections. What these varied stimuli have in common, though, is a direct falsification of the sense of self and what we are in truth. So, with stuff like this that we've all been exposed to, we need to deal with that first.
Yeah.
And then when we've dealt with that, we can start to replace those programs that we were influenced with, even by ourselves, with the things that are going to help us. And then when you've taken control of that, you're doing something that, when I learned hypnosis, is very, very powerful and true. Unlimited power belongs to someone that is able to get their conscious mind and their subconscious mind to believe the same message at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff this book is about, folks.
Yeah, words of gold. Words of gold. I would recommend this book. There is a tradition. There is another author who says it's very nice, his expression. There are many expressions for it. You can call it magical enlightenment. You can call it, but one of my favorites would be, from other traditions, would be opening the eye in the void. Someone said something like this, because to see, basically, when you learn to see, it's not like there is a difference at one point between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. You learn to see with your entire being. And sometimes this doesn't involve to center yourself or your entire being. Doesn't mean that you are inside your body 100%.
No, because your body is a part of your soul complex.
Yeah, I agree with this.
It's not something that's separate from it, or it wouldn't be alive. And there's also something else, and this comes from Eastern mysticism, from people that practice Hinduism, but it's true and transcendent nonetheless. You are not your body. That is not the sum and total of who and what you are. You are also not your mind. So if you're not your body and you're not your mind, what is left in the silence is who you really are.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Tatvamasi. You are that. Tatvamasi. Or how is it called? Sat Chit Ananda Rupam Shivoham. You are Purusha. That's it. And if you do magic from that level, yeah, that's very important, because some people do magic from a mental, emotional level. But if you do magic from the level of pure Advaita, I mean, I can give you an example exactly to let's say to place a footnote at what you said. It's called Virata. It's called the nature of the Virata. I mean, a yogi or a practitioner or a magician. If I connect to the Virata, Virata means it's like the cosmic cow. It's like the everything that is in form.
Yes.
But if I connect to the Virata, for example, I connect with the Virata of the clouds. Well, if I'm one with the clouds, I can act as a cloud. I can move as a cloud. I can connect, for example, and it says very nicely in there is an Upanishad. I don't want to spoil the name, Marduka Upanishad or something like this, and it says the eyes, my eyes are the moon and the sun. My forehead is the sky, and my feet are the earth. The blood in my veins are the rivers that flow everywhere. The mountains are my lungs. And basically you identify your body as being everything. Everything is your body in this. And if this is for sure one of the views of magical nature that I like the most. It doesn't matter what tradition I encounter. This type of feeling that my body is everything, it resonates true with me from a deeper sense, not from the egotic sense, because of course the ego, this is very dangerous, because of course the ego comes small steps behind your back and says, yes, you're God now, you can no, that state is beyond the lower self or the unintegrated self or whatever you want to say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very powerful, very powerful.
And you've got to watch out for the egoic mind in that respect. Now, I don't believe the egoic mind needs to be annihilated like some people do.
Me neither.
Because without it, we wouldn't be able to relate to anybody.
Yeah, that's for sure.
However, it's got to know its place. It's the interpreter, not the master.
Yeah.
And, the master is that which is in the silence. And I see a question here, an analogy of, is this an analogy of the microcosm and the macrocosm? Yes, in a way it is. We'll talk about the Emerald Tablet, and a lot of people don't say the whole statement. They go as above, so below, and leave it at that. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus states, as it is above, so it is below, so that together they may work the miracles of the one thing. Together.
Yeah.
And, you take a look at that and you realize we are a reflection of the entire multiverse. How many billions and trillions of cells are in your body? Do you know? What about all of the organisms that live on your skin? Do you know? All right. We are like cells in the body of the multiverse. However, the air that it breathes, as an analogy, the things that it experiences are from the infinite. And in a sense, the very multiverse in its entirety, however many dimensions, however many parallel universes, however many worlds, how much life, are all just a cell in the all. And so we see it's like fractal geometry, if you're familiar with that. It doesn't matter with a fractal geometrical shape, how small you zoom it in, it's the same. How far you move it out, it's the same.
Yeah.
And we are a fractal within that. We are a cell within that. And when we realize our connection to the infinite, then we are able to do what we were actually given the ability to do. Magic and power is not some supernatural thing. It is a part of the very makeup of the human being, and I believe of any other intelligent life. But we are unaware of it because we have accepted as truth the egoic mind's lies based on the things we've been taught, that it is the master of the house.
Yeah.
When we do what we've both been talking about here, folks, and connect with that which is not our body and not our mind, we are plugged in to the very flow that is immortality itself.
Yes.
And, so if this encourages you folks out there, I really would be happy. I'm hoping that this is something that is reaching you in your heart, because, neither one of us, we were talking before we went on the air, script our broadcasts. We didn't script what we're talking about here now. We share from the heart.
Yeah.
And I hope very sincerely that this is something that's touching you. And feel free to ask questions and comment. And if I haven't answered your question to your satisfaction, ask something more, and I will do my best. I'm not the fount of all wisdom, okay? And I'm not afraid to say I don't know.
Me neither.
But I'll do what I can. Fair enough?
Very fair. Very fair. So, guys, don't be shy. Usually, these guys, these fellows that watch this channel have very rich questions, let's say. But even the act of speaking right now to a big or a smaller public or a medium public, even the act of speaking about these things enacts these things. Even this live is an act of magic. In my inner forum, come on, isn't it not? How can it not be? Because if you speak about magic, when you speak about magic, it needs to be an act of magic. Why leave the temple? Take the temple with you everywhere.
Yes.
If you write about magic, it needs to be an act of magic. Even the writing about magic. So I integrate the so-called magical awareness in everything. This is what I encourage also to others to do, because we all have our inner innate godhood that we must awaken to, in a sense, without falling into the trap of toxic pride or self-centeredness or bullshit like this. No. For example, in the mini group that we work together in a guild, let's say, we are all equals at the same table, like an Arthurian knight table. Nobody is the boss, nobody is the chief. Everyone has their own purpose. Everyone bears their own key.
Mm-hmm.
I have a key. That guy has another key that maybe I don't have. And I also like to think that, yes, we have individual minds, but we must also connect a bit and balance out the group mind too.
Mm-hmm. And I like to put it in this analogy, because that's very similar to the way our community is too, is that we're all on this ship together, so we all better take an oar. We're all in the practice together. We're all growing together. Doesn't matter what knowledge a person has, there's always more. And you can learn from everyone. I like this example, and it's true. I had a conversation with a 4-year-old little kid who said something to me that was so profound that I had to meditate on it for 6 months.
Whoa. What was it, if I can ask?
He said, "Aren't we all God?"
Come on. Whoa.
A 4-year-old little kid asking questions, because, of course, his parents were very religious. And he said, "But aren't we all God?" Just
Whoa.
a poor kid, a 4-year-old little kid. And then he went on to play with his toys.
Wow.
And I sat there. I've got work to do now.
Yeah, indeed. You never know whom is speaking when someone is speaking. You never know this. And neither that person. We are mouthpieces sometimes of the forces that we work with. And for example, if you have observed this quite much, I think. For example, when you take on a god and you want to befriend a certain archetypal energy, you take on the god's agenda also in the same package a bit. And I found myself behaving in certain manners, micro expressions, mini behaviors, things that I wouldn't normally do because I have fully engaged myself in working with that god. I have started to manifest unconsciously feats and agendas regarding that energy. Because any entity in the universe, as long as it is in a form, it has an agenda. That's for sure. And when you summon the spirit, you, in a way, you become the spirit a bit. And if the spirit is so powerful, if the spirit is so experienced, it can overshadow you, and you don't even suspect it for a while.
There is a practice that was done in the Golden Dawn called the assumption of God forms. And that's something I think if you're going to work with gods, that's, regardless of the fact that they deal more with Egyptian gods and goddesses, but, God forms have certain characteristics. The way they used to do that was they used to visualize right down to every scrap of colored clothing that the god or goddess would have in front of them, but facing away from them. They would visualize that. And if you want more information about that, they used to use, of course, the king scale colors rather than the queen scale colors, because the king scale colors were projective, and they would use Kabbalah for that. And when they had it to such a degree that they felt that the visualization was as accurate as possible, they would, through the color of what sphere that god or goddess operated in, step into the visualization. And so in that sense, it was kind of like a ritual possession, but not a 100% possession.
Yeah.
And through that, then they would call the subordinates of that god or goddess to their temple and give them instructions to go do thus and so. And their idea was that these spirits would look and they would say, well, that may be Osiris. We better get to work. And that's what they would do with God form assumption. And then after that, of course, they would have certain practices that they would do to cleanse themselves from that energy.
Yeah.
And, I found with, it wasn't necessary to do that. Going into the silence, I think, gives you all the authority, if you need that, to call through the realms. But I would use the God form assumption, and I still do sometimes to this day, and I've done it with the gods of the north as well, in meditation. And my question would be, what can I learn about you? And of course, they do have agendas, but it meets their agenda to tell you more about themselves. Yeah. Because then you'll be able to work with them more effectively. And with some spirits, these were spirits from a different tradition, but interesting to me nonetheless. And one of them said, why don't you possess me?
What?
It was a reverse possession.
Whoa. Well, okay, that's interesting to hear about it.
I got to be part of that spirit's consciousness. Now, that spirit's consciousness was still there, but I was in that spirit's realm. And it's a very intimate thing.
Yes, it is.
Because I let that spirit, through an invocation, be within me. It let me be within it. And that power became something that was a great door opener for knowledge. If you're wondering what spirit that was, it was a spirit called Asmodeus. And if you go back into the ancient times, he was also called Aishma. When they said he was the Lord of the seven powers, he was talking about the chakras. Very, very interesting. And I discovered a lot of things. And in fact, when I had my experience in 2009, where they stopped my heart and I died,
Whoa.
the spirit that actually was with me, because I was out of body completely during this. I watched the doctors working on me. And then I went somewhere else. And the spirit that actually came to collect me was Asmodeus. And he's actually the one that brought me back to my body and said, it's not your time to go yet. And as Lord of the Seven Powers, then I woke up.
Well, that's you experienced your own form of resurrection for sure.
It was interesting. And it was funny because I had this heart issue going on, and it was electrical. And my heart was flooding, and it was not pumping blood at all. Nothing they did worked. And my last recollection before I had the out-of-body experience was the doctor looking at me, putting the paddles on me and everything else, and saying, you know what, we're going to have to stop your heart. But I need your permission to do that. And we hope when we stop your heart that it will reset and we're able to start it up again.
Whoa.
And I thought, if.
Oh my God.
Well, what was I going to do? I was going to die anyway if they didn't do something. So I sort of nodded a little bit, and then they said, okay, here we go. This is going to hurt really, really bad. And they stuck something between my teeth and pumped me full of drugs and everything else like that to hopefully make it so that I didn't bite my tongue off or whatever. And I had deep scrapes and indentations on the roof of my mouth that didn't heal for months because I bit down so hard. And it was an experience. I have a broadcast on it, actually, if you go to my channel, and it's called My Death Experience. And I actually shared that.
I will watch it because it's, for me, things like this are profound revelatory. That's for sure.
It was different, I'll tell you that. And one of the things, too, is a loss of the fear of death.
I bet you did.
I bet you did. Yeah. There I was, and you know what? I was still around. That didn't mean that I was in the infinite. I was on the flip side of the same paradigm we're in here. That's what the world of the dead is. That's why when they talk about Helheim, where there's a feast, but nobody ever gets full.
Yes.
That's part of the illusion, right?
Yeah.
People that identify with that as being truth, they're never going to be full.
Indeed.
And so it's as you progress, and the word progress isn't the right word either, because you know what, it doesn't matter. Like we said at the beginning here, none of us know anything really when it comes to the multiverse.
What is exactly the real definition, or what is the essence, the idea of knowing? We don't even know for sure what knowledge is for real. We like to grasp what do we actually call knowledge? What is knowledge really? We know things. Yeah, we grab things into our memory. We associate them with emotions, with thoughts, but we are not our knowledge. We are beyond our knowledge. Who we are can never know, because if who we really are would know, it will be lesser than the reality. It won't be the truth. So from what I see, even to have knowledge, only a lower entity in me can have knowledge. And the speaker in itself, it's not who I am.
No, and that's true. And the knowledge that we have is like the scripts of a very complex video game. that doesn't have anything to do with truth, but is what the rules of the game are. Here that we play. And you know what? A lot of the so-called knowledge that we have, that's not permanent either. Because when new things arise, guess what? The knowledge changes. You know, people used to think the world was flat. That was truth. Well, relative truth. Because they were, you know, they believed that. And 4 turtles held it up. Or 4 dwarves, depending on where you were in the world. You know, but then they discovered that if they kept on sailing, they came back to their point of origin. So knowledge changed. Facts changed. All right. Everything that we have here is part of a cycle and is not, it's relative truth. And by that, I mean, it's true in the sense that it works within this game. But truth with a capital T has nothing to do with any of this. And we can't have knowledge of that. We can have intuition, which gives us only what we can handle. And that's where we know, in quotes, we don't have any idea how. We don't have any idea why. We're not even sure exactly what. But we do have that knowledge that that connection is real somehow. And people often dilute themselves by going on a quest to try and bring definition and understanding to that, rather than just accepting it and realizing everything else will just work itself out in the rules of the illusion as we live. Just embody. I like that term. Embody the connection.
Yeah.
And, you know, the rest don't worry about, because you know what? You do know that on another level to the extent that you can, because even your daemon is not infinite. All right. But as the infinite, you already know everything. But you couldn't handle that here. It would destroy your mind, because it's never ending, never changing, or always changing, pardon me. Chaotic, because there's no way to put a definition or restriction on it. So you can only handle your intuitive knowledge here. Don't worry about it. Live it. That's all you can do. And I don't care if you practice magic for 100 years. That's the same thing. All right. And the moment we start getting out of that, we start falling into arrogance, dualism, slavery of the mind. And then we start enslaving other people because we're programming them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Something that we used to deal with here on this channel is New Age bullshit. We criticize, and by we, I mean people who follow us, who enter in dialogue and are active members here on this channel. We criticize New Age movements or cultish behaviors, or we teach people how to stay away from false or fake guruship or guruship attitude or stuff like this. So indeed, in today's world, today's world needs an injection of common sense, and people need to be trained how to avoid bullshit sellers. That's the idea.
Yes.
And, you know, they put themselves in the middle of the room and they say, worship me because I know I'm the embodiment of the infinite. And when in reality, maybe they have a daddy issue, or maybe they have some troubles, let's say, up there.
Excuse me. Yeah. Well, you know what? Have you ever heard of Jim Jones?
I myself, I have studied. I don't want to seem arrogant, but I have studied the history of sects, cults. I used to study them. So Jim Jones, of course.
Yeah. Well, for those that may not know, he was a very charismatic fellow in the 1970s, I believe, and he became a cult personality, and he had thousands of followers. And, he started to get investigated in the US for fraud and various other things. And so he left and he went to another country. I believe it was a place in Africa, actually, and set up a compound and had all this stuff going on. And then with the paranoia that he had, because he was basically, people worshiped him. It was a cult of personality. And then he came up with the idea that they should all kill themselves. And they poisoned the Kool-Aid, and the men, women, and children at gunpoint, often, if they resisted, drank this. And there were thousands of people that died as a result of this. Now, there's been other things that have happened. There was a Solaris cult that they did something similar, and various other places. But this place with Jim Jones, that was the biggest.
Yeah, it was the biggest. Yeah.
And that's what happens with cults of personality. They go off the deep end. And you know what? That exists in occultism too.
Yeah,
if somebody starts telling you that, they're the fount of all wisdom, run the other way and forget about everything they said.
Yeah.
And I see a comment here. It is magic. Is magic the science of equilibrium? Absolutely. And it's actually more than that. When you are in a place of centered balance, whether you're using any system, if any, but you know what's working with you, you can then create a temporary imbalance, which causes the energetic flow to move to fill it. Just like when hot air rises in the atmosphere, the cold air rushes to fill it. And then, your manifestation happens and you're back in equilibrium. You're not staying in equilibrium currently, like for all time, because that's stagnation. And that's like a pond that breeds bugs and stinks. Okay, it needs to have a flow. Okay, but it is the science of equilibrium and manifestation through causing flow to go in the direction you will it to go. And that's actually what ritual is all about. Whether you practice it physically, whether you do it in other ways, whether you do it through meditation, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. And I hope that helps.
Very interesting to consciously create a disequilibrium as a form of magical manifestation. Very deep. Very deep, yeah. Very deep. If I come to think about it, you can do this with symbols, working with symbols. For example, there are some symbols that hold power, where you can break a symbol and you can, from that symbol, to make to have let's say access to the power of the symbol, you need to break it. Someone said. What do you think about this? To break the symbol.
You could do that
as a sacrifice. What do you think?
That's similar, actually, though not exact, to making bind runes, because you're taking symbols and uniting them into something that's a totally different symbol, but yet still has the characteristics and influences of the originals. Now, if you're going to break a symbol in that fashion as a form of sacrifice, you'd want to do it rather, in my opinion anyway, ceremoniously, because you want to have that connection that this is what you're doing. You're not just destroying a symbol.
Yeah.
And then it would be interesting to take that symbol and create with it as a part, or whatever you broke off from it, something entirely new. And I've never done things that way, but you know what? That's something that's given me some ideas. Here's a thought that just came to me. Why not take a symbol and actually cut it right in half and create the new symbol through polarity, and have it unite in a totally different way. And then you could have a birth ceremony for the new symbol.
Wow.
Okay. There you go.
Nice. Okay.
So you had a funeral for cutting the symbol, and then
this is lovely. Yes. Wonderful.
Just a thought. I'm actually going to do that.
Yeah. I'm actually. Yeah. I'm actually gonna do that too, to be honest. Good idea. Good idea. Can you imagine this? Because one is just to chant and to draw the symbol but to actually have a funeral for the symbol. You are terminating a being, or you are helping a being to transform. Because that letter is that piece of ond, that piece of energy there. It's a being. You are helping the being to transform. Very powerful indeed.
And
Very
of course,
powerful.
nothing is either created nor destroyed. So the
Yeah, of
original
course.
symbol is still there, but it's for your purposes. You've used that whole enactment that I think would make very, very, very good sense to your subconscious mind too. To create something new.
Yeah. Maybe this is how, and this is more like my poetic self saying this right now. Maybe this is how God uses us also.
That's possible, because look what happens, when in terms of the reproductive act. What happens? Life force from both parties unite. And so that's the same as polarity uniting to create something new. So we're actually doing everything in dividing a symbol and bringing it in together through polarity that we are physically, except without the pleasure and all the things that go along with it. But, in terms of the psychology of it and of the magic of it, the same process. And maybe you're right. Maybe that's what the spirits, at some level do with us.
Maybe it's just my poetical thinking and that's it. But come on, there are some spirits in the universe with extreme, with unimaginable power.
Mm-hmm.
They can play with the masses and they can play with our minds like we play with chess pieces.
Yeah.
And if you had a lot of experience with hypnotism and with possession and with much more than this, for myself, I know the extent. I don't think I know the extent of the power of some entities that can have overgrown us, let's say, in their integration or level of infinity. Maybe they are not infinite themselves, but they have overgrown us like in this manner. And for example, when I worked with Enochian spirits, I had some shocking experiences with them,
Oh, yes. And they're guilty, a lot of them. And it is funny. But, they do their work.
Yeah.
But one thing that I found, and I think this is something that is a reason for their grumpiness with many people, the way they do things. If you read the actual writings of John Dee, he says in one of the earliest parts of his work, Egypt has a form of magic, but not power. And what did the Golden Dawn do? They made pyramids of the squares. And if you look at anything, if you don't know what this is, just Google Enochian, Enochin, and you'll be able to see these things if you look in the image section. They made what they called these magic squares with Egyptian pyramids and Egyptian god forms over them.
Yeah, I remember.
Governing it. When the Enochian spirits stated that they didn't agree with the practices of the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, the same with any system. It's a part of the spirits themselves, I think, in that aspect of their own limitation where they think they're better than everybody else. Okay. That's not true. But for the purpose of working with them, nod and smile.
Yeah.
If you're working with them, don't use the Egyptian pyramids.
Yes.
Use the tablets themselves, and
I agree.
You'll find them less grumpy.
Yeah. That's for sure. For example, when I approached them with runes, they were actually friendly, very tough, very powerful, very imposing, but they were not. They didn't have the attitude of crushing you.
Mm-hmm.
When approaching them with the Golden Dawn system years ago, Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. If you worked with them from a god form, from an Egyptian god form, they were there to scare the shit out of you. So basically, you clearly are a very experienced magician, because you can feel the intention, the attitude, and the energy of the spirit regarding a system, and that's pretty advanced stuff, man. Not everyone can do this. I don't know too many persons that can actually do this. That's for sure. Very impressed. And with the runes, uh, I did a shamanic approach to the Enochian system.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and trust me, the communion was very interesting. Well, we have a question here. Let's read it. Can you penetrate subconscious mind with your own power, or you need help from a spirit? What do you mean? Or I misunderstood hypnotism.
Well, actually, where it comes to your own subconscious mind, you want to do that yourself. You don't want any other spirit doing that. Okay, because that's your home. That's your connection point to the soul of the world and to the infinite. You don't want that being under the auspices of some other spirit.
Yeah.
Okay. Hypnotism is helping your conscious mind and your subconscious mind to get on the same page with each other. Because a lot of times there are things that are running in the background below the surface of our awareness that are really contrary to our growth. You know, things that maybe we heard when we were a little kid. And we have no idea where it came from, but it's still there. And so getting rid of that, we need to become empowered ourselves. And spirits, they are to work with for things that are in the pursuit of knowledge. Perhaps you want something to manifest in a different way. You could do it yourself, or you could use a spirit because it's in resonance with what you want to do, and it would be easier. That's the reason why. You never call a spirit because you want it to control your life. You know, I'm sure there's enough churches all over the world where you can go to have that happen. Okay, this is not that path, and I know you know that. I'm just joking with you here. But the thing is that, you know, when we're dealing with our own minds, we want to be in control of that, and we don't give it away to anything else. Now, invocation, when you have a spirit come in, that's for the purpose again of knowledge, and it's agreed upon by you and the spirit for a certain set time. And then when that time is done, which shouldn't be very long, then it goes back to its own place. And you don't kick it away. You don't, at least in my opinion anyway, you don't sit there unless it's a really chaotic spirit that, you know, is going to cause bad influences to everybody around your household. You know, in that situation, banish the sucker. Okay. When it's not, tell it with respect that it can go or it can stay, as long as it doesn't cause problems intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah.
And when you do that, that respect is returned. It's mutual respect, but not obeisance. We don't worship in that sense of the word. Worship in the true sense of the word means ascribing worth. That's all it means. It doesn't mean bowing down. That's the way religion is made.
This is so nice. Worshipping means ascribing worth. It's like, in fact, this is like the power of the Fehu rune or the F rune. You know, the rune of value. Worshipping, giving worth. Very powerful definition. Yes. You are recognizing the worth of something,
but not devaluing yourself.
Yeah, not,
you know, and so that's the thing.
Yeah. True. And not devaluing yourself. True. Because when you say, oh God, please, I beg you, give me your grace, I'm such a sinner, you are giving power to an egregore of some religion, and you are devaluing yourself. basically the egregor is like a spiritual vampire, and, you know, and yeah. So yeah, this is a perfect definition of worship, guys. One of the best I heard recently for a good while even. So worshiping is giving worth to something without devaluing yourself.
And you know what? The spirits, at least the ones that I work with, wouldn't respect you at all if you did devalue yourself, because they would look at that as weakness.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people say, well, that's so contrary to, you know, light and goodness. No, it's not. It's the natural order. Because that which is weak, in the sense that, you know, it refuses in willful ignorance, that consciousness, to be anything other than the lowest form it could possibly be. It's destined to return to the dust and be used for a new version. And the spirits, you know, they look at it, and, you know, I like the way one magician I know put it, and he said, you know, he was speaking of the Devs, and he said, you know, when somebody becomes liberated and they have identified with themselves, the spirits rejoice because limitation has been destroyed. When somebody obliterates themselves, the spirits rejoice because limitation has been destroyed. They don't care. That's not their focus. Okay. That's not part of their agenda.
Yes.
When we are willing to become, then we are in resonance with the agenda of most of the spirits that are out there that are more evolved than we are. And we've got to stop having the idea that we're the top of the totem pole where it comes to life in the multiverse. We're not. Okay, there are some spirits that are higher above us, like we're higher than the amoeba. Okay, and you know what? You never know with some spirits how advanced they are. That's why it's important to be respectful, because even one that may seem to be low on the hierarchy, if there is one, may be far more evolved than the entire human race. And how would you feel if a little rodent came up and it was able to speak to you and told you what a worthless slave you were to it, and that you were to go and do this and to do that, or it would threaten you with the chains of darkness? Well, what would you do? With your big boot, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, when we deal with respect, and we've got to respect ourselves, and then we're able to respect others, including spirits.
Yeah.
That relationship builds instead of antagonism.
Yeah, because what you say right now applies directly to some attitudes in the ritual chamber, in which the magician tries to constrict, insult the spirit, cause curses or threaten the spirit with imprecations. What would you expect? Of course, it will retaliate at one point. Of course, if you mess with him, he will F up your life right away. They are more smarter than most magicians, and they will find a way to break their understanding based on your own words.
Oh, so, yes. You know, the old stories of the genies and how they used to screw up their masters, you know.
Yeah.
Put it this way, you know, he commanded a spirit to help him build his house, and his house was finally built. But he used very disrespectful means. He called enemies of this spirit like thugs to bring it before him, and so on and so forth. And that's what some ceremonial magic is like, unless you adapt it. Okay, because a very, very heavy Christian, Judeo-Christian influence.
Yeah.
Well, what happens? The house got built, but it got built too close to a gas line. What happens? Well, at some point in time, the gas line leaks in the house, boom, and every little nail and piece of wood flies out for blocks all end. You know?
Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, respect is better.
Yeah, indeed. Look, for example, I know this. Look from my life, how I see it. Sometimes I speak with some Kaula practitioners or some very high initiate persons that I know they are up there on the ladder and they have some very powerful initiations from some secluded traditions or stuff like this, man, I speak with respect. They don't even with spirits too, but with men, you never know in what body what spirit can be. We all have this body, these members, eyes and whatever, but you never know who hides in a body actually. And I have met people with extraordinary spiritual power that were very humble. They were not going public about it, or they were not making a show of their spiritual power at all. And I had a shit ton of respect for them, because in the world of occultism, there is always a bigger fish, no matter what.
Yeah.
And we must be respectful with initiates and us between ourselves, and avoid competition, avoid cultism, avoid but I myself cannot understand. For example, look, I came towards you with deep respect, and look, we are now talking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a vibration, a resonance that happened because you felt my respect, and there was something in there, a sense of friendship or something. But in another direction, there are people who call themselves, for example, with big names, masters, grandmasters, magicians, whatever. I wouldn't dare to approach them because of their own ego. I know how that feels.
And that's a sad thing that's so prevalent. But like you were saying, there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah.
And when we compare ourselves to one another, we're just falling to the total trap of the egoic mind, because it's the egoic mind that's worried about how great or how small it is.
Yeah.
When we realize that even if we were a blade of grass, we are still a part of the source. We're still a part of the all. And that's really the only thing we need to be concerned about. And, trying to be impressive, trying to, be sensationalistic. That's what happens in a lot of places in North America. Look at this ritual. They've got big brass braziers of flame going everywhere and all kinds of fancy things and robes that I'm sure that were being worn for the first time that they had purchased from someplace, all for the camera.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I say, you know what? Why profane your art?
Yeah.
Because really, when it comes down to it, explain how people can do these things for themselves. Because then it's not about you. And that's what I like. I don't want disciples. I don't want people around me all the time. That would be fine. That would drive me around the bend and back. Because you know what? I have my own stuff to do. I'm not where I want to be yet. I will never be satisfied throughout all eternity, because growth must be endless, or else, you know what? We're done.
Like Odin.
Yeah. And what I would like to do is rather show people, because, the spirits do want me to talk about this stuff, but I want to do it in a way, and I have been doing it in a way where I show people how to do things themselves and get into the place where they can do it themselves, because then they have the keys. If they've never looked at any of these things before, they can read a book and understand more of what it's talking about. They can practice so that their own connection is there and their intuition starts to kick in, and they're able to do stuff on their own, and they start to do magic and have results, and they start to do all these things. It becomes about them. And that's exciting, because you know what? There's too many people out there, and I'm so glad you're not one of them, and that's, I've really got a good sense of that.
Yeah.
Resonance with you.
Yeah. Me too with you. Yeah.
But it's not about us. It's not about our personality. It's not about our practice. It's about all of you.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where it really becomes something that's important and in resonance with the awakening of the consciousness of humanity that the whole world has been pushing for. I think that's why we have so many things happening, because the entire soul of the world has finally said, enough. It's time for you to grow up.
True.
And we are entering into the place where the child becomes the adult.
That's a painful process.
A lot of stress.
Yeah.
Because it's change. But it will happen.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at the clock here, and we've been on here for almost.
Yeah. Okay. So at the end, anyway, so I must say that I enjoyed this conversation very much with you. I hope everyone that will continue to watch this video after it's over will enjoy it at least as much as I did. That would be great. First of all, I will buy your book today. Okay. You got me going with some techniques there, and I really liked a few sigils from there. So I will start to look at it soon. Trust me.
Right on.
And you guys, look here. I have posted the links to his Patreon community, the link to his book. Oh yeah, book. There are 2 links of the book, and you put here. Patreon book. Yeah, to the book. Yeah.
Okay. And realize too, with the book, you can find it in any Amazon marketplace, not just .com or .ca, but also where you are. Take a look with just typing in the name Transcendent Keys to Power in the search box, and it should show up there for you because I'm in all of them.
Do you have it on Kindle also?
Yes, I do.
Perfect for me. Okay, I have what to read today.
If you have a subscription to, they call it Kindle Direct, I believe it is. There's a pop-up window that shows up on that.
Yeah,
if you have that, you get it for free.
Not even expensive, man.
Because the subscription covers it.
Oh, yeah. Good idea. Yeah, good idea. Nice. Okay, I have it right here. Anyway, first of all, thank you very much for accepting my humble invitation. And if you feel inspired to, you are always welcomed in my channel as in your own home. Thank you very much for your presence, your teachings, your energy, and everything you represent for the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a good one, folks. Hail to you, and see you at the next video. Bye-bye now.